This is the OPPO Reno8 Pro and it's been officially launched in the UK today. It's an Android phone that makes some massive claims about its camera system. It's also not priced like a flagship. So, I'm interested. The Reno8 Pro is billed as the portrait expert, which is thanks to a 32 megapixel Sony sensor, which sits on the selfie cam. That means it can draw in about 60% more light than other sensors, apparently. And it also has an autofocus system that can recognize multiple faces. We're also promised super performance in low light conditions during 4K video shooting and normal photography. It's also not a flagship phone. The Reno8 actually sits below the Find X5 Pro, which I reviewed a little while ago and which I'll link to above. And that means that you lose a few features such as wireless charging, that dynamic screen refresh rate, and the Snapdragon 8 Gen Series 1. But does any of that stuff matter? Who is this phone for? And more importantly, what is that camera really like? Excuse the sudden change in surroundings. I'm currently traveling, and the reason I'm suddenly not in the studio anymore is because I was waiting for the official pricing of the Reno8 Pro. I now know that it is definitely £599 in the UK, which isn't budget pricing and it isn't flagship pricing. It sits neatly in between. But the other reason I'm here today is because I'm going tomorrow to Paris for the official Reno8 launch, which is very, very exciting. And there's some other stuff happening there as well, which I can now tell you about because I have the press release, the embargo has lifted, and that is the OPPO Pad Air, which is OPPO's first tablet to launch in the UK, the OPPO Band 2, which is obviously a fitness band, and the OPPO Enco X2, which are headphones. So there's a lot happening tomorrow. I don't have those products yet. I'm going to check them out as soon as I can, but I just wanted to update you on the price of the Reno8 Pro now here. And yeah, back to me in the studio. The Reno8 Pro is powered by the MediaTek Dimensity 81900 Max. It has 8GB of RAM, a 4500 mAh battery with 80 watts super fast charging. It's also obviously ready for 5G. The screen is a 6.7-inch 10-bit OLED panel with a 120Hz refresh rate, although unlike the Find X5 Pro, which has the dynamic refresh rate that goes down to, I think, 1 Hz right up to 120Hz, this is fixed at either 60, 90 or 120Hz. For biometrics, there's both facial recognition and an under-the-screen fingerprint reader, which is fast, reliable. I've had no issues with either of those. Lastly, it runs ColorOS, which is OPPO's take on Android, and which remains a very light, respectful bunch of subtle tweaks. It's a joy to use in that regard. OPPO makes some really lovely looking phones. You can't get past the fact that just like the Find X5 Pro, the Reno8 looks lovely. It features this streamlined unibody flat edge design and even has chamfered edges, very Apple-like. The result is very slick. It's I think a very high-end looking phone, and it's a lovely thing to hold as well. Those chamfered edges, the glass back, it's just a very nice, comfortable phone. I also love the way that the camera housing blends effortlessly into the rest of the phone. Again, a little bit like the Find X5 Pro. You're getting a lot of those design touches from that flagship in this phone. The display is very nice as well. It's bright, it's sharp, and thanks to that 120Hz refresh rate, it is nice and quick. And that doesn't seem to have an impact on the battery life either, which is very, very good. But the star of the show really is those bezels, which are barely there. It's very hard to get that across on this video, but trust me, when you get this in your hands, the bezels pretty much vanish. So this is a lovely looking phone. It's very, very well built. It feels much more premium than the price tag suggests. But what you care about and what you came here for was to find out if that camera is as good as they say it is. We'll start with the selfie cam, which is powered by a fairly big 32 megapixel Sony sensor. And that claim about it being able to draw in lots of light seems to be well founded. These test shots were taken in fairly poor lighting conditions, they were handheld, and I think the Reno8 does quite a good job at brightening them up without adding too much noise. And no, it's not knock your hat off incredible, but it is a very convenient and reliable way to take photos of yourself and other people, particularly given the fact that it can focus on more than one face at a time. On the back, we have a 50 megapixel Sony sensor and 3 lenses, a regular zoom, an ultra wide and a macro. There's no telephoto, which some might see as a bit of a miss potentially. It's a bit of a shame, but given that we have 3 pretty usable lenses, we can probably forgive OPPO that. And this back camera takes some very lovely photos. I think the colours are quite muted. That isn't for everyone. It's not this kind of smack you in the face, oversaturated Samsung type camera. It's understated, it's accurate, and it's a little bit pixel-like in its processing. I'm a big fan of the Pixel, and I'm a big fan of this camera as well. You can get some great results from pretty much all of the focal lengths, particularly that wide angle. I've had a lot of fun with that, and the macro is very, very good. But this phone is all about the low light stuff, thanks to that MariSilicon X imaging processor. The results are impressive. The stills I've taken with this phone at night are all handheld, and I think it's done a pretty good job of processing them, which does happen pretty quickly as well. You don't have to wait around for it to do its thing. And all of these test shots in London were taken straight out of the camera, like I say, handheld, no messing around with the images, and I think they look really nice. And the 4K low light capabilities are very impressive as well. I'll leave some footage on the screen for you now during my wander around London. That's not bad at all, is it? The only slight downside, I think, with the Reno 8 Pro is the frame rates that you get. So 60 frames per second is only available in 1080p. 4K is limited to 30 frames per second. Some people will be annoyed by that, I get that. But again, that's probably seen as a flagship feature by OPPO, which is why you'd have to go for something like the Find X5 Pro for that. But despite that, the Reno 8 Pro is a very good shooter for both video and stills, and that low light performance is very good. Is it the best on the market for that? Well, that's a very subjective thing. I think it's very, very good. It's up there with most of the flagship phones, actually. And given its price, if you're really looking for a phone that does some very good things with its lenses, then you can't really go wrong with the Reno 8 Pro. A very quick note on performance. If you know me, you know I don't do benchmarks, and what's lovely these days is that you can't really buy a bad phone. They're all pretty quick. The Reno 8 Pro is powered by a MediaTek Dimensity 81900 Max. I have no idea what that chip is or what I should expect from it, but this phone does feel as fast as a flagship for normal use. There's no stuttering, there's no stalling, there's no crashing. It's as smooth as butter, which is helped by that 120Hz refresh rate. If gaming and pushing your smartphone to its limits is your thing, I'd suggest checking out some of the other reviews that give you much more specific usage tests. But for normal use, this is a very quick phone. So who is the Reno 8 Pro for? Well, given the keen pricing and that camera performance, I think this phone is for one of two use cases. I think it's an ideal midpoint between budget and flagship, and it does feel, like I keep saying throughout this entire review, it feels like a flagship in all but price. So if you're looking for an upmarket phone, but you don't want to spend £1,000 plus on it, then this is a great shout. But it's also potentially a very useful tool for creators who want great, no hassle camera performance, no matter the conditions. If I was keeping this phone, which I'm not, I do have to send it back because it's a review unit, but if I was keeping this, I would use this for this channel. There's certain things that this camera can do that my iPhone can't. So that low light performance for video, I think is slightly better than my iPhone 13 mini. I'd probably use it for this channel in some way. So if you're a creator, but you don't want to spend lots of money on an expensive camera, and equally you don't want a rubbish smartphone camera, the Reno 8 Pro is a great choice. There are two other versions of the Reno 8. There's the standard Reno 8, which shares many of the specs of the Pro, albeit with a lesser CPU and a 90Hz screen. It also lacks that MariSilicon X for the low light video stuff. And the Reno 8 Lite has a 60Hz screen and again, no MariSilicon X, but it does have user expandable storage. And if you want to pick up a Reno 8, it is available from the 1st of September in the UK. Now, if you fancy checking out one of OPPO's flagships, keep watching for a link to my full Find X5 Pro review.